5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey,
Oi, oi, how are we, boys? Just the
not
one
too
boy.
bad, not too bad.
Just the one.
Just the one boy on each side. Two in total.
My favorite thing's the countdown.
Every single time, man.
It's like almost for no, like we're literally been talking for the last 10 minutes, and now we're talking.
Nah, it's good. I think like before we go into what's been on your mind this week and what's been on my mind this week, I think we should give a bit of a shout out to Hardcore Headstart and maybe just run through what's the latest with that. Do you want to give a quick rundown of like what Hardcore Headstart is and like what's the latest in terms of where people can find our content and what content is out at the moment?
Beautiful. Well, I'm going to butcher this immediately, but
Nah, we'll do it together.
do it together. Good. Fill in my gaps for me.
Yeah.
Essentially, we're a Hardcore Headstart, right? The name itself. All right. We believe in getting a head start in life by going hardcore. Now, a lot of our content revolves around the wealth and financial kind of space and education, because that's where we started. We started in investing and personal development 7-8 years ago, and throughout the journey, we've found a lot of, I guess, luck and success, and we found a lifestyle that we believe would be very valuable to the people, especially people who have lack of community, people who don't really understand what it is they want in life, and the monetary or financial aspect of life kind of eludes them. It's very confusing. So we focus on a lot of personal development, a lot of financial literacy, financial education through investing, and we have a trading side to us as well. And so far, the content that we started putting out is, I guess, us building the business. So building the business of Hardcore Headstart. We've got a lot of products behind the scene that work for us personally that we're starting to branch out to the public. But right now, it is purely us putting out content of how we are going to build this business. And very soon we'll start putting out financial education kind of pieces to try and start teaching people on something that we have been working on for many, many hours and many, many years.
Yeah, for sure. I think you pretty much summed it up like in a nutshell. I think behind every sort of name or brand or business is people, and we're a group of like-minded people at this stage. Less than a dozen of us, but we're sort of sharing very similar traits and similar interests. We're trying to build this, I guess, community where we share our knowledge, but then also document some of the experiences we go through. And at the moment, we've got some content that we'll be sharing around on Spotify and YouTube. So you can find clips on the podcast with some of the guys where we discuss different topics. But then there's also shorter clips that I'd really recommend you guys have a listen to. It covers topics in bite-sized files, so a couple minutes long, and it covers things like what is Hardcore Headstart, the importance of brand integrity. There's a whole bunch of other topics that's definitely worth checking out. And if you've enjoyed what we've discussed on the last 4 or 5 podcasts, you'll definitely get a lot of value out of the Hardcore Headstart podcast as well.
Yeah, I think we'll put all the links in the description and stuff like that today. But the YouTube channels are Hardcore Headstart and Hardcore Headstart Clips. And on Spotify, it's at the moment, I believe, Inside Hardcore Headstart.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, go and check it out because it's very near and dear to our heart. It's the kind of that lifestyle is that we've planning on giving to other people is what's made me what I am today. It's made me to be able to sit in front of this camera and have the authority over a conversation or have the kind of expertise in a specific field. It's been able to make me a better person than I honestly believed at such a young age was possible. So yeah, very thankful for Hardcore Headstart, and I'm really, really excited to be able to start putting out educational content and inspirational content out to the people and try and recreate some of the lifestyle in other people's lives. So
Yeah, for sure. So I suppose like the podcast that like Daniel and I have been doing is a bit of a, you'll see a bit of overlap with the podcasts with Hardcore Headstart, and you'll see, some of the themes. Sometimes the conversations continue over there. So like if you're enjoying what you're hearing here, there's definitely a lot of value from a lot of the other boys. Where just the reason why we're sort of doing this is, you know, being able to start working on stuff on the side while also like building out the vision with more people, because that takes a little bit longer. It's a bit more nimble when you've got like one or two people. So
mm.
um look, with that in mind, let's maybe talk about, what's been on your mind for this past week. What's front and center for you? Any sort of recurring themes or anything you're sort of focusing on at the moment?
um, when it comes to focus, a lot of my, I'm really lucky to not have a 9 to 5, obviously. So my main
Yeah.
focuses are really just consumption of um, educational content, just trying to learn from the best in the world, the A-class people. There's so much information in the world these days, thanks to the internet. There's a beautiful video by Carl Sagan. And there's kind of, just to understand the video a little bit, well, I'm sure we'll link it down below, but it's essentially Carl
Who's
Sagan,
Carl Sagan first? Oh, sorry. Go on.
who maybe you can explain
Who's Carl
Carl Sagan.
Sagan? Sorry. Oh,
I,
no. I'm not sure who Carl Sagan is. Yeah.
Let me be very clear. I actually don't know the answer of what he is, but all I know is he's very intelligent. He's a very deep
Yeah.
thinker. I'm sure he has some doctorate or some philosopher or some title. I honestly, I'm blanking right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he or maybe but he creates some content, and he does a lot of podcasts from like way back in the day. So he's one of those really deep thinkers, similar to, like, if you put an idea in your head, it's like Jordan Peterson kind of, um, Sam bloody, well, what's his name?
Does he talk about like philosophy and business, or does he talk about kind of, or was it like more self-development or?
A lot of the deep problems in the world. So he
Yeah.
understands a lot of space, kind of physics. Well, I've heard him speak about physics a lot, which just blows straight over my head. But
Yeah.
he speaks, very deep about a lot of things, which is
Yeah.
not, not very abundant in today's kind of content. But yeah, the video I'm referring to is essentially where he walks in a library of millions of books or hundreds of thousands of books, and he walks about 10
Yeah.
meters from left to right. And in that 10 meters, there's about 1,000 books, right? And that amount of books from that quick 10-meter partition is essentially the more, or if the essentially the books, or more than the amount of books that you can read in your entire lifetime,
Shit.
right? And that's just in one
Yeah.
library in the world, in a 10-meter kind of period, 10-meter patch of books. The point to terribly explaining that entire reference is that the amount of information in the world is only growing, right? It's becoming more
Yeah.
scalable. So when you have it in a library, you can only read up to 1,000 books in your entire lifetime. But now we have the internet, where content is being created at such scale that there is no way you can read everything and consume everything, right?
Yeah.
It means you have to have someone curate your content, curate your information, or you need to learn from a certain kind of people that will ensure that you get the best information, right? And the
Yeah.
way we go around that is we learn from A-class people, right? And
Mm.
these are your founders. These are your Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk's. These are, everyone would know their names, or it's your Carl Sagans, who's very deep thinkers, Jordan Peterson. It's A-class people who process ideas in a very deep way and then communicate them effectively. So essentially, they spend their life, or many, many years and many, many hours thinking of these ideas. Then they curate it for us so that
Mm.
we can understand these and then potentially apply them. And a part of Hardcore Headstart again is to also curate those ideas and then, in a more even simpler way, communicate them to people. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what's been on my mind, is just consuming as much knowledge as possible to then be able to curate it for other people.
Yeah. I think like now that you actually explained that, the name actually rings a bell again, because I've seen the clip that you've talked about. And I know this is you've probably seen this a dozen times, or like it's not the first time you're seeing this like that piece of content. How did you like I'm not sure if you remember the first time you saw that clip, but how did you feel when he was explaining this concept of, you know, there's unlimited knowledge, but there's only finite time, and that kind of paradox, or that issue that presents in itself? What sort of what was the thing that stood out to you? Did you kind of relate it back to how it applies to yourself, or?
In relation to me, I felt lucky is the actual feeling,
Yeah.
because the content that I was consuming had already been curated. So I was very, very lucky through the lifestyle I was living and the people around me to put me on the correct kind of path in what content I was consuming.
Yeah.
So essentially,
Because your goal was to learn as much as you can in the uh in like around investing, right? So
investing in personal development,
yeah.
I think they go hand in hand, funnily enough. To be
Mm.
able to manage or become financially free, you need to be a completely different person than when you started.
Yeah.
Because if, at the age of 17, 18, if you're not financially free, it means that kind of person is not, and you need to evolve and develop and become a completely different person
Mm.
to eventually become financially free. And that's kind of what we did. And you do that through experience and through knowledge and through other people's experiences. That's what a book is. A book is a cultivation of someone's entire life's work and experience into many, many pages.
Yeah. And
Right.
you're saying, like, with all the knowledge and the pages and the recommendations, you said you felt lucky, right? Tell me more about like that feeling.
Yeah. So obviously, I had a mentor through Hardcore Headstart right at the beginning,
Yeah.
and he essentially, honestly, he essentially created a Hardcore Headstart like uni. Right. He created, like,
Mm.
it's a terrible word because uni's got negative connotations, but think of it as a structured learning program where someone's already done all the work to find out what the correct material is to learn, and then has
Mm.
handed down and passed it to me. Because essentially what we're trying to do is create keyhole or key turn solutions, right? You go in one way, you
Yeah.
come out the end, and the problem is solved, right? So if you
Mm.
go into this journey not financially free, once you do this certain amount of work, you want to be financially free, if that's your goal, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the goal is.
All the way I sort of see it is, you go to uni, you get this half-assed curriculum, and you get these topics where maybe, over a year there's 8 units, and maybe 3 of the units you find useful, and the other 5 kind of
Mm.
irrelevant or just not that interesting, right? Dylan, or like the founder, has come to you with a curated curriculum, saying, hey, this is what you need to know, and it's from the best people on that topic,
Yeah.
instead of, hey, this is like, what we want to push as part of the university curriculum, and here's the books you need to read,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
cover like a broad topic, and you're not hearing from the best, you're just hearing the topics being covered, just on a very surface level.
So I looked up Carl Sagan just for reference. He is
Yeah.
this is his bio on the Carl Edward Sagan was an American astronomer, planetary scientist, cosmologist, astrophysicist, astrobiologist, author, and science communicator.
Sounds like Einstein's good friend.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Right. So,
You know, what that reminds me of? It reminds me of, there's this video on YouTube I'll have to show you at some point, but there's like 7 or 8 like super, academics, right? And they're talking about like metaphysics, and like they're talking about how they're having like this conversation. So imagine Dyson and like Edison and like fucking like all these, you know, the smartest people in the world having a conversation, and it sounds really intellectual, and you try to follow along and you get some bits of it, and then they go on a tangent and you're just like, I've got no idea what the fuck they're talking about.
Literally no idea. Like,
Yeah,
I think
but their minds are fascinating.
oh, the way they think, and like deep thinkers are very interesting to me, because but to become a deep thinker, you need to kind of have that structure or foundation already. Like, the reason we don't
Mm,
understand what it is they're talking about is because we don't have the same foundational knowledge they do. So the way
yeah.
I've worked out my brain consumes or retains information is I need to have a place to put it.
Mm,
So think of my brain as like a timeline. Okay. If I'm learning information that's at the end of the timeline, I'm not going to be able to understand it because my brain is at the capacity here.
yeah.
So there's an analogy that we use a lot in the company. It's like the bridge analogy. So if you want to build, if people are here or they're on this side of the cliff, all right,
Yeah.
you want to get them to this side of the cliff. If you're going to build a bridge in between, and the bridge is actually the information you're giving them, you can't give them the end little slate of the bridge. You need to give them the pieces in order so that they can build
Yeah.
that foundational knowledge and then continuously progress. Because if you give them the piece of information here, you're just going to confuse them even more. And in this analogy, they're going
Mm,
to fall and die, which is not good.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I suppose it's a little bit like you know, I suppose maybe music is a good analogy or like an example. So I'm not sure if Limpa explained it like this, uh, but I guess the way I understand it is anyone can sort of pick up a guitar, and let's say you've got no prior knowledge in music, you could watch a YouTube video and learn how to play a song by physically like copying someone, but you haven't taken the time to understand, sort of what each string is and what each string sounds like, and sort of understanding like actually how to read music. So
Mm.
you're just learning how to play it, but you're not actually learning how to read the notes and whatever. So if you build that foundation up, then you've got a deep understanding of what it is you're doing instead of copying someone, I
Yeah.
suppose.
I think
Um,
that resonates with me with school.
yeah.
You know how school is essentially a memory game?
Like, yeah, like just remembering and regurgitating what.
Yeah. It's not actually about
Yeah.
learning and understanding the material. It's about being able to memorize it for a test.
Yeah, retention versus understanding
Yeah.
and embodying, internalizing a concept, right?
Yeah.
Different,
Like,
completely different things.
yeah. Memory with no with no anticipation of uh actually using that knowledge.
I suppose it's like you can have a lot of knowledge, but you don't know how that knowledge and its application works in different contexts if you don't regularly apply something, I suppose. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah, with most things, I would implore people to go really, really deep into the subject. Like, I think Robert Kiyosaki he says, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't understand it well enough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
that's
like that. I like that concept.
yeah. Maybe it's not evident that I understand enough because I've been a bit all over the place today, but
Yeah.
it's yeah something that sticks with me is like you need to understand things deep into your core for you to be able to
Yeah.
communicate them and then actually teach other people. If you have teaching the other
Mm,
people in mind, it kind of allows you to create 1,000 different ways to explain something. And for you to be able
yeah.
to do that, you need to know it really, really deeply.
Mm,
So
yeah.
go
Yeah, for
deeper.
sure. I think like as for this past week, there's two names that sort of have sort of stuck in my mind, and they somewhat overlap in the sense of the two concepts that I've taken from these two people, and those two people, one being Steve Jobs and another one being Tim Ferriss. So I think it was actually one of the other boys that posted a video about, and it might have been Samir actually. It might have been
Was
Samir.
Andy putting his
No, no, no.
motivational videos?
No, I think it was Samir. So the context of the video is there's a hairy question asked to Steve Jobs at a conference, right? So it's kind of like an unexpected, underhanded, insulting sort of question that kind of he handles really well. So the question is based around how, um, so at the time, Steve Jobs was working on something called Open Docs, and it was just one of his, it was one of the companies that was like founded at the time, and there were some issues from an engineering standpoint or software development standpoint, and the question was, like, how do you see Java dealing with the ideas of OpenDoc, and like whether like they actually match or not. And he starts the conversation by saying, hey, you're an intelligent guy. And then Steve Jobs comes back and says, I feel like there's a butt coming, and he grabs a chair and he's just like, what are you gonna say? Like, as a joke, right? As a
Yeah.
joke. um but Steve Jobs answers the question really tactfully, and he says, you can only please some of the people some of the time. So it's a general statement to this guy saying that, you're working with an application that is obviously flawed, but, there's, if you take into everyone's considerations, you won't be able to get a product that is going to work well for anyone because you're trying to cater to too many people. Um, and then he goes on to elaborate, and he says, it's very simple, right? The way they approach things is they put customers first. So when you're in like a software development thing, right? So you're building open docs, you got a team of software engineers or programmers. You can either start with the engineering background and be like, okay, what cool features can we do? What can we create with our capabilities? Or you take the simple approach and you go, who am I building this for? And you're focusing on the customer rather than your capabilities, right? And I started thinking about this about, like, for Hardcore Headstart and for ourselves, it's like, okay, we've got the podcast, we've got this, we can create this, we can copy that person, we can do all sorts of stuff. Or we can take a step back and think about, who is the content for, who are we trying to build value for, what does value mean for them, rather than what can we do. Do you know what I mean? So like, that got me really thinking. And then Tim Ferriss's question that's got me thinking again, to build on that, is, if this was easy, what would that look like? Have you heard that before?
Say
That
that again.
question?
If this was
If
easy,
this if this was easy, how would that look? How would this look, or how would that look?
probably, but it's not ringing a
Yeah.
bell at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a super powerful question, because let's say if we're thinking about, what should be the format of this podcast, what should be, where should we focus our efforts? Or even the other day we were talking about taking on the 75-day challenge, right? This idea of setting some, you know, some habits, or some, things that you have to do every single day for 75 days without fail, right? And I suppose we came up with all these other ideas. Should we do it different? Should we add this? Should we put our own spin to it? But then I suppose if you ask that same question, you go, if this were easy, what would it look like? It forces you to come back and sort of focus on being more simple than over complicating it and doing it well, and then maybe building on that. Yeah.
No, that's a ripper question. Tim Ferriss's line of questioning, especially in podcasts, is always ripper. But if this looked easy, what would it look like? Yeah, I think that I'm just really trying to think about it now. But it's like that creates kind of more capacity for what you believe you can achieve, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I think so.
if this was simple, yeah, what would
And
it look like?
and I don't think it necessarily means like, you have to take away the features or take away the value. It's more of a, like, you can't prioritize everything. So it's like coming back to what how could you make this work better for you based on your capabilities, based on your resources,
Mm,
that sort of thing, based on where you're at with what you're doing.
yeah, absolutely. I think like it's tying so many different principles into that one question there. It's like a minimal viable product, kind of just get it out,
Yeah.
simplify it, lean product. Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. What was that from? So people and I can go and can listen.
Yeah.
I don't know how I
Um, I'm trying to think, like, I don't know exactly where the reference came from.
right.
Um, I think it was actually, it's just been referenced a couple of different times from different people from YouTube, but he's mentioned it on, I'm pretty sure in his 4 hour work week, as just like one of the things.
Mm,
So it often gets used in the context of people having too many things to focus on and not knowing what to prioritize, or simply they don't have enough time. So
yeah.
it's like, if you were going to set a goal that you thought wasn't achievable, you can ask that question to simplify your processes so you can make things more efficient. So let's say if we apply this to our thing, right? So at the moment, it takes us maybe like 2 or 3 hours to edit these videos, cut them up, upload them, and um, all the post processing that goes with it. If we ask the question of, if this were easy, what would it look like? That might force us to go, all right, we're actually being really inefficient by doing X, Y, Z. What's a better way to do that?
Yeah. I think there's two books that kind of that makes me think of, which is like The Lean Startup.
To lean a startup? Yeah.
Yeah. Have you read that?
Uh, I think I did. Eric, um,
Yeah, whatever.
Eric's, I forget his surname, but I felt, yeah, I don't know if too many things sort of stuck with me on that book. Like I felt like there were some things, but then there was a lot of like filler content that didn't necessarily resonate. But how about you? Like what sort of stood out for you from
No,
that
I
book?
think yeah, it is that kind of agility and that simplification of like fixing the problem and like
Yeah.
um yeah, really simplifying it to a such a degree where you're yeah, really yeah. I'm actually trying to think about it and communicate it at the same time, which is not how my brain works at all.
Is it tied back to like essentialism as well? It's like kind of focusing on,
Yeah, that's the other book I was going to say as well, but it's
oh sorry, yeah.
yeah, focus yeah. I might have to come back to that one on a different podcast and give you my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
And
But you felt like you got a lot of value from that book?
the lean startup,
Yeah.
I think it's kind of just references a lot of the conversations we have, like in the house of stay agile, stay flexible,
Yeah.
try and fix the problem, be proactive, think previous to the problem occurring, which is how CEOs
Yeah.
are meant to think. Similar to essentialism, solve that one domino that's going to, solve the rest of your problems automatically, solve the biggest problem, biggest ROI problem. Um, yeah. And I think that ties in with that. Like, what would this look like if it was simple? That question from Tim Ferriss. It really
Hmm.
kind of breaks down and brings maybe a sense of reality to most problems in life and
Yeah.
in work. Like, if you strip away all the emotion from it, be like, mate, if this was easy or this was simple, how would it look?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I,
okay.
I think like that's kind of like unstoppable, right? Like if you literally go with what's the I've got all these I've got all these things that I can and focus on first, but if I can only choose one thing and make that the most essential thing, and then make that essential thing as easy as possible, I feel like that's going to naturally create a lot of output, but on the highest value activity, not just on any output.
I think the reality is like the less amount of work put in for the biggest ROI. Similar to
Yeah.
our investment strategy, like we don't want to be in front of the computer 12 hours a day, short term trading and trying to find every little goddamn pip because it's horrible. It's
Yeah.
wildly difficult, and in comparison to
Yeah.
ROI, unless you're a freak at it,
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Well, that's right. So like, let's run with this example. So with the trading, you can, the options to you are like, you know, day trading versus long-term investing versus swing trading versus stocks versus commodities versus all the options to you. And then it's kind of narrowing it down to which ones are the most essential, and then how do you do those essential things really well. And I think that's what Dylan teaches us, and that's what we've kind of focused our time on, rather than the day trading and
Hmm.
the stuff that we don't have an edge in.
Yeah, and that's what the public portfolio is kind of built for. It's really
Yeah.
built for like that retirement kind of lifestyle of living where it's you live off passive income once you grow it to a certain point. But these
Mm.
companies don't need your maintenance or focus to watch them every 2 minutes, because we're investing in large growth companies where the opposite, people when they go for large ROI, they usually pick penny stocks or small cap stocks and try and own large percentages of companies and try and can run them to 100x and stuff like that. But anyway, that's pretty complicated, and I apologize. But
Actually, you know what? So that is complicated, and like I suppose when I hear to endorse people to buy like Shiba coin or like Come Rocket or that timing was good. Elon Gate and
you
all those pan.
dude, that's fucked up. That was funny.
No, I think I timed that pretty well.
Yeah.
Um, but you know what? We did have the intention to talk about personal finances a bit.
Mm.
We're discussing after the podcast last week. What do you think? Do you want to talk like a little bit on maybe your thoughts or the way you tackled like sort of personal finance, like from when you started your journey, I suppose, or like just yeah. What's your take on it, or how do you handle that?
I guess the easy way to why I use the why I think personal development and investing is so similar is because to build an investment strategy or to sacrifice in your personal finance, you need to understand your goals and where you want to go.
Yeah.
So for me, the big thing that was built into me was to reverse engineer where it is I think I want to be 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 years, and understand the action necessary to take to get to those goals.
Yeah.
So if I
Gotcha.
want to be a multi-billy by 30, right, my action taken needs to be
That's very different.
wildly different to me being, financially free by 30, for example.
Yeah.
Right? You need to make ridiculously leveraged moves and build Facebook essentially, which is just not going to happen with my capacity of just not going to happen. So
Yeah.
it needs to be self-aware as well, self-aware, willing to think into the future and understand what it is you want for your life. Try to gauge objectively what it is you think you want and reverse engineer the amount of action necessary to get to those goals. And
Yeah.
think big,
Gotcha.
because I see a lot of people, especially starting this, as Sam has got a great example. Samir, he says like his goals, especially when he was coming out of uni or going into uni, was essentially to get a job that paid 80K salary, and he was sweet.
Mm.
Like that was a number in his head. So
Yeah.
if that's your goal, then your action required is very minimal, which means you're just copying yourself out. It's just a cop out,
Mm.
essentially. Like you need to truly understand yourself and think big upon what it is you want, what your goals are.
Yeah.
And then,
I suppose.
yeah, sorry.
Oh,
Go.
sorry. So I was just going to say, so that's really sound advice for macro, right?
Mm,
Sort of your sort of like having the right psychology and and like mentality when it comes to approaching your finances. What are some tips, or like maybe some things that have worked for you from like a tactical or like a more granular day to day? how have you sort of managed your finances when you first worked? So like, was it when you were you working part-time or full-time when you
Um,
were investing at the time?
Started part-time Nando's. Um,
Yeah.
I think like, dude, the first place to start, like, I sometimes forget that this needs to be said, but do like an
Yeah.
ins and outs, ins, how much income you're earning and how much your expenses are.
Yeah.
Like track it. All right, you write it down on a piece of paper or build out an Excel graph or chart or whatever. I don't care, but write
Yeah.
down how much money you're spending, like on average, and how much money is coming in. Okay,
Yeah.
and
So
very simply, if your expenses are higher or the same as what is coming in, you need to change your lifestyle. She's like, the beginning is not complicated.
so it's just maths, I suppose.
It's
If
math.
you got more going out, then it's coming in, you're not actually saving money.
Yeah.
But I suppose maybe like is another way sort of put um actually knowing where your money is going. So in terms of you're spending money, but having more awareness of
Absolutely.
where exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big food's always been a killer for me. I'm maybe skinny or getting a little bit bigger now, but like food, you guys would be surprised. Like you're like, oh, I'll spend $100 on food a week because that's that's my expenses when I go shopping. But then you eat out every two
Yeah.
days.
Yeah,
Especially now
100%.
people get Uber Eats or your subscription services. Check your subscription services. There's ones you either don't use or you don't need. If you've got every streaming
Mm,
service and you know you're earning $300 a week, you know
yeah.
you don't deserve those streaming services yet. Be
Yeah.
real. Sacrifice to the point where it's uncomfortable because that's what's going to be necessary to get to your goals. So yeah, I think that's beautiful. Literally go through your bank statement. Like we live in the internet.
Yeah.
We live in a
Yeah.
world
You've
that
got
has
literally all
internet.
the transactions.
It
Yeah.
has everything you spend all the time.
Mm.
Just
I think, yeah, having your like starting the process of actually being aware of what you're spending on means, there's this saying where they go, what can be measured can be optimized, or what can be measured, whatever's measured can be refined, right? So if you know where you're spending your money, then you're starting to ask those questions of what can I cut out? What do I want to cut out? What do I want to keep? And what am I comfortable spending on? So I think a lot of people are afraid of tackling their finances in terms of, they think they're going to lose. It's almost like it's cutting. It's like, I'm going to have a worse off lifestyle if I start budgeting. And
mm,
that's not necessarily true. Or it's just they're too scared to see what they're actually spending on because they're just afraid, right? But as soon as you tackle it, I feel like most people realize that actually they're spending on things that they don't care about, and that's stopping them from being able to have money to spend on things that they do care about. So I've done like this really simple thing with sort of like friends and family, where I've just gone, how much is your budget, right? And most people kind of a bit reluctant, but then I dig a bit deeper and I say, what are you actually spending on? And they name a few of the common things, but then I dig deeper. I go, are you spending on this? Like, what are you doing on petrol? What are you doing on, whatever, right? And then I talk them through sort of like short term, medium, and long term goals.
mm,
And I sort of explain it in a way like, even if you're not investing, let's say you've just told me that you care about holidays more than you care about eating out, then I start explaining it in a way where it's like you're choosing to eat out Uber Eats twice a week, which means that you can't take that Bali trip once a year.
mm.
And it's
Yeah, I
like, do
like
you
that.
want to eat? Do you know what I mean? And it gives them a kind of, you can actually have more of what you want rather than giving up. And this is not with that. This is without introducing the idea of investing or making more money. It's literally like opportunity cost.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a great example of opportunity cost. And do you want to give a definition of opportunity cost?
Yeah. So opportunity cost is, and I might not explain this that well, but the way I've always seen it is they're um, given the choice of taking one decision, you're foregoing the opportunity to have to have the fruits of another
Mhm.
like decision. So if I choose to be on this podcast, I can't play video games. If I choose to drink coffee, I probably am foregoing the. And I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this.
You can
I'm foregoing the yeah.
you can go deeper with it as well, where it's like opportunity cost is if you make the decision to go out on the weekend and drink, you don't have that money to
Yeah.
invest, which means your opportunity cost was that short-term freedom for your long-term freedom.
Yeah.
Or based on
Yeah.
ROI, if you make a decision in business that returns a 2x, or you could have made that
Yeah.
decision that returns a 10x, right? So the opportunity cost is the difference. So it is a pretty big principle to understand, and it's riddled with through your life. And opportunity cost with money is you know wildly important,
Mm.
because if you do the math with compound interest, um, is it $1? Some math, $1 equals $9,100. So you're foregoing the
Over 50
difference
years.
over 50 years. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's insane.
essentially, yeah, every single dollar you spend or waste, I should say, on unnecessary short-term kind of stimulus is
Mm.
wasting that long-term, future of happiness, joy, doing whatever you want anytime you want. And then there's also opportunity
Mm.
cost of time,
Yeah.
which is, using the bar example. You're going out, your friends going to the bar, you're wasting time
Mm.
where you could be reading a book, which is going to be able to leverage your decisions,
Yeah.
because you now have more knowledge. So it's a little bit nuanced, but it's
Mm.
opportunity cost is riddled everywhere. And if people, I believe, used more intention behind their decisions and purely thought about
Mm.
opportunity cost, then the decisions will rapidly become more effective, and you'll progress a
Yeah.
lot faster.
Yeah. So you're saying that $1 compounded over 50 years, the opportunity cost is around $9,000, right? For every dollar, you're foregoing $9,000 for your 50-year-old older self. And I think these extreme examples gives you context into how little decisions can have big impacts over the long term.
Mhm.
Um, and like it doesn't necessarily mean you have to dictate. It doesn't dictate that you have to live at the most extremes for everything. You start off small, but it's still useful to understand, small decisions compounded make for big results. And I think by even just asking the question of what am I giving up by doing what I'm doing helps you understand if you're choosing, you're prioritizing what you want
Mm.
and you're prioritizing actions which will get you an outcome or the result that that you've said is your priority or your focus.
That's a ripper. I think, yeah, some like actionable steps for people is like do the ins and outs, or do that. Understand how much money you're spending on what. Where is your biggest expenses? Can they be reduced? And find your goals, because then you will have a certain amount of motivation or inspiration to be able to kind of sacrifice some more to reach those goals. We call it a why, right?
Yeah.
Why do you do what you do? Why do you get up in the morning? And why do you want to sacrifice these short-term things to be able to reach this long-term goal of yours? Like, what is your reason for it? For example, my
Yeah.
why is I find a lot of comfort in, or a lot of motivation in, helping other people, especially in third world countries, due to experience I had in Bali. I went to Bali,
Yeah.
and I went to a little island called Gili Trawangan. Right now,
Mm.
this was only a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, just before Corona. My why previous to that was a little bit more selfish. It was like I wanted to become financially free, right? And
Yeah.
granted, I was young, but I don't think when you're young, there's nothing too bad about that until you dissolve that sort of form of ego and have a stronger why, which is what I believe I have now. So
Yeah.
yeah, went to Bali, went to a little island called Gili Trawangan just to set the scene a little bit. There are no
Mm.
cars. There are not even scooters. If you've been in Bali, you know there's scooters everywhere. There are no
Yeah.
scooters or motorbikes on this island.
Yeah.
So we took a 2-hour boat ride to get there. We get off, and there's horse and carts, literally horses
Mm.
and carts taking us to our hotel. Fun ride, touch scary because there's no infrastructure or roads. It's just dirt, sandy tracks taking us there. So, yeah,
Yeah.
few knocks on the head, but it was a beautiful, awesome experience, obviously.
Mm.
But a few days into the trip, we decided. I think it was actually the last day we were there. We decided to take a little bike ride, like a bicycle ride, into the middle of the
Mm.
island. Right, the middle of the island is a tip. Like
Yeah.
that's where the rubbish goes on the land. It goes straight into.
How are you? How are you feeling at the time as you're sort of, like initially you're going, oh, this is like kind of bumpy, but how are you feeling as you're sort of going closer and closer into town? What was
Um,
going through your head? What
Happened
were the
over a
thoughts?
few days. So like the main where you get
Yeah.
off is essentially like the main touristy part of it. Like just
Yeah.
to again set the scene, you can bicycle around the entire island in like 20 minutes. So
Right. So
small, so
really
tiny.
small island.
Yeah, so it's not big. Um, but there was so many different feelings and emotions and um kind of stimulus to take in because it's my first time overseas as well. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
like I see different types of people. I'm like, what is going on? It's wild. It was crazy, but it was fun. It was so much fun. But yeah, on the last day, I think we stayed there 3 or 4 days,
Mm.
something like that. I can't remember. But we stayed on the last day just before we left. Yeah, like I said, we were bicycling into the middle of the island itself, where that's where all their rubbish goes, and that's where all the people who live there, not tourists, the residents. That's where all they live.
Yeah.
It's pretty emotional, but like they're living in these huts that are like I don't even know the size, but like 2 by 2 meters. What's that? Yeah, maybe 3 by 3, and it's just plywood, right? Just
Mm.
plywood boxes on some bricks or stone foundations with like corrugated iron roofs and like chicken wire everywhere. And
Mm.
if you know Bali, like no doors, by the way. And if you know Bali, Bali is hot. So,
Mm.
like the living conditions, like these people barely have beds. They're sleeping on the ground. Their water comes from a well, right? And this well is just like it's in our kind of Western world unconceivable or inconceivable, whatever the word is. Like
Mm.
it's horrible to look at, right? It's
Yeah.
almost sewerage water kind of thing. Like they don't have sewage over there, but it's essentially that. It's
Yeah.
terrifying to really kind of imagine or put yourself in that place. And like, if I had nothing right now and I lived in this place, I have no opportunity, I have no way to get out.
Mm.
Right. So for me, it's the motivation to be able to give back to similar people with literally no opportunity. There's a lot of places in the world, especially in where we live in the first world country, where you can work at Macca's, invest $100 for 50 years and become a millionaire.
Yeah.
$100 a week for
Yeah.
50 years and become a millionaire. In these countries, because in third world countries, they literally do not have opportunity to even work to get themselves out of
Mm.
not the rat race, out of poverty.
Yeah.
Right? If you live in a first world country, me telling you do your ins and outs and stop spending money on junk, like yeah, I
That's
see stories so many times where you get food and these people are serving you the food, but they're just looking at the food like they've never even eaten a single piece of it. Like it's horrifying but motivating and inspiring. And another thing, they're so happy.
mm.
What right do we ever have in this world to not be happy? We have the internet, we have Zoom, we have every luxury we could possibly want just by working more hours. Like these guys don't have the opportunity to even ever experience what we experience daily.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when you start going down that, once you take the red pill and you kind of head down that rabbit hole of, starting off with why I should, why I should look into my personal finances and get on top of it. You start to be more critical with your decisions, right? And it starts, I feel like naturally, often most people understand the concept of working towards a goal and being able to achieve it. And the more critical you are on your purchases, the more critical you think about, what outcome or what's your reason for saving the money. Because, if you're making huge sacrifices, it begs the question of, why am I doing all this? Why am I giving up Uber Eats when all my friends eat Uber Eats? Why am I giving up going out drinking when my friends are drinking, right? And especially when you're younger and relative to what you're making, you're sacrificing, right? You ask the question of why, what's it all for? And I think naturally you start with, at least for me, I'm speaking for myself here, but I started with, I want more experiences over material things.
Mm.
And then, you know, when I started, like when I went overseas, similar to your experience, you start thinking about, okay, once you like, it doesn't take that much to get the material things that you want and the experiences you want for yourself. So beyond that, what can you do? And when you start thinking about giving to other people and what you can do for other people rather than yourself, I feel like that instantly switches your goal of, why you're doing things, and your why becomes a lot stronger.
Mm.
And you want to set your goals and ceilings a lot higher because of that, because, now you're not thinking about one person, you're thinking about more people, and why you need to go large, like the sign behind you.
Exactly right. Right. That evolution happens over time as well. So I don't want people sitting here going, "Oh, I don't think like that." As it does happen over
Yeah.
time. It happens with maturity, happens with wisdom, happens with accumulation of knowledge and experiences. So um, that's kind of
And
like
setting
where.
bigger
Hmm?
setting bigger goals as you knock down
Absolutely,
the little goals, right?
absolutely, absolutely. I think, yeah, I think we've given kind of that perspective on wise and personal finance today, and an actionable step where people can, like, people will hear that so many times, the ins and outs, but no one will do it.
Yeah.
So if you're
Yeah.
listening to this, like, and you're in the position where, your finances are not in check and you're not investing with us already, um, take some action. Simple.
Mm.
Go and check it out. If you need some help as well, my Instagram, Marky's Instagram, DM us on Facebook, leave a comment on the YouTube. Like, we will do the best we can to be able to give you as much advice and assistance as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, depending on where you're at. So if and like, it takes a bit of self-awareness, but like if you're in a situation where you have um like a lot of debt, or you've got yourself into a situation where maybe you've got things that you need to take care of, right, just because of bad purchasing habits, or maybe you're looking after two people, whatever your circumstances is, right, tackle those problems first. But it still comes back to understanding where your money is and where you can sacrifice so that you can tackle those goals. So I would say most people, tackle your debts first, get into a place where, if you can make a little bit more money, do that, but then really look at your expenses closely. And then from there, you can start setting up, or like try to make things a bit more automatic. So maybe you put a certain amount aside for like your short-term goals, your medium-term goals, and your long-term goals. So you've got, your short-term might be you're looking to save for a new phone because your phone is like, it's on its last legs or whatever, or you need a new monitor which will help you with like just work, or making an income or whatever it is. And then your midterm goals might be like holidays, and your long-term goals could be, giving back to, other people, and donating like part of your income. So
Yeah. No, I mean, we could go for days and hours on this, but I think that's a great place to great place to wrap it up.
yeah, I think so. We've covered definitely some interesting topics. Thanks
Yeah.
for all the guys that made it to the end here.
Yeah, you made it. Good luck. Well done. Well done. Dude.
Done.
All right. How'd you feel today?
Kind of.
Just a quick wrap up.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think it was good. I was expecting a big
Oh,
big
where?
bucket, but nah, wait.
Were ya? This is either a vase or a jug for a decanter for
Decanter.
scotch. But
That's a big word. Shit.